Hello, everybody. It's Sam, the Reclaimer developer, and I wanted to do another devlog on how things are going with the state of the game. January has wrapped up, and so we're officially moving on to third-person camera and player controls this month. And I wanted to go over like the progress that's been made over the last month. And as you can see, I've created this branch here that's purely going to be for work that's going on this month. So I'm going to go ahead and launch our code editor, and we will do a fresh build and take a look at how things are going. If VS Code would be so kind as to hurry up so I can launch my build tasks. Here we go. So we're going to start with a fresh build, and we're going to talk about the asset tables. And while that's doing its work, I wanted to briefly mention the website, which was one of my goals for January. I have the domain secured, and I have like a placeholder website in place, but there were some technical issues with the with how it was being hosted. I'm going to be looking into that this month, and hopefully when I have some spare time, I will take a look at that. And the main reason I wanted the website up now is for the stream schedule, because what I found is instead of like streaming every week, just doing one stream like at the end of the month to show the state of things, getting the current like feature set to a getting that stable. Hello, Seraph. He was on the stream last night as well, but anyway, just kind of showing how things are going, cleaning up some stuff, and there were some people who showed up and we got to have good conversations on that. So I think I'm just going to stick with a monthly stream schedule. And I want to get the website up as soon as I can in order to have something up there where people can like subscribe to updates and whatnot. But let's go ahead and show what the state of the game looks like. And so things are going to be looking like this for a little while, because these are a lot of the kind of low-level game systems that I'm going to be working on. So just having the main character Adam here in his little sandbox area is pretty much how things are going to look for a while. But hopefully this month he's actually going to start moving. Animations aren't going to be on the schedule for a while. It's going to be closer to the end of the year, because honestly there's plenty of work to do before we move on to a lot of the really advanced things. And you'll notice that the skybox is a bit different. We had the blue sky and the water and mountains. And the reason I have this is because I wanted to lay something out in a asset file where I could understand how it was loading this texture and sending it to OpenGL. So I decided to take all the faces for the skybox and put them into one file and read it off of that. Well, let me show you the work that's been done. So as you can see, we have a new update to the DevTools, and you can see we have our texture assets, and I can click on one. This still doesn't scale quite properly. Like, I'm working on fixing this issue, but you can load up the textures that are being displayed. The skybox is still ridiculously huge. I need to work on that, but you can see how it's being loaded. It's just one file, one image that's top down, and it just loads faster, and it's much easier to calculate the offsets for each cube face. But that's essentially what it looks like on the surface. And also the shaders are being loaded out of their own table as well, and I'll get into that right now. And one thing I want to point out is, like, the Reclaimer loads probably in about half the time that it used to take, thanks to this asset table system, which, you know, was one of the main points behind it. Is I have a lot less parsing to do. Things are pre-parsed, stored in a single file. I have one file handle per major asset type, whether that's sounds, textures, models, what have you, and it just loads them off a disk in such a way that they're pre-parsed, serializes them directly to structures, and it works perfectly. So with that, I will go ahead and show what one of these asset files look like. So, so here we have the asset file is a .ref, which stands for Reclaimer Asset File, and there's two major types right now. So far we have textures and we have models. And this wasn't, the whole purpose of this past month working on these things wasn't to get every single major asset file type. It was simply to put a framework together of, like, here's how we can expand on this, and when we need to add new asset types, here's how we can do it. So we have textures, models, and after the verification string inside the header, and I can go ahead and pull up one of the asset files, like the textures, to show what it looks like. Yep. So in here, let's open up that. So you can see this is what the textures asset file looks like. We have our RAF verification, which is just one final sanity check to be like, hey, are we good? We may include some other metadata in here at some point, and you can see, like, there's Atom, there's default skybox, which the first set of data right after the verification string is a collection of indexes, and that these are static size. So each tag is 16 bytes long. We have a 2-byte type, 4-byte file size, 4-byte allocation size, and a 4-byte offset. And so what the file size is how big it's stored on disk, and the allocation size is how much space, like how much memory do I need to use to allocate the actual structure that it's going to be serialized to. And then the offset is literally just the index starting from the very beginning, where the first byte of that index is stored, where the first byte of that asset is stored in the file. And so, and the actual file consists of a collection of those indexes, how many indexes we have, what the file type is, whether it's a texture or a model or, you know, whatever type it would be, and the verification string. And we store that header and the file handle. And that's pretty much it. I don't really think I need to go over the parsing logic. I mean, it's literally just, like, here's an example. Let's see, texture, asset, yeah, it's literally just parsing all of that information. It doesn't, there's not really a whole lot of, you know, science behind it. It's literally just taking the raw data from the individual files, storing them inside of this single file to be read later. And I ended up doing the same thing with the textures as well. And this is a good example to show, because you can see the layout of the like what the indexes and the actual data look like together. So so this one right here is the shader file, the Reclaimer shader file, or .rsf. I'm sorry, I just can't seem to talk today. But we have this RSF extension, which stands for Reclaimer shader file, and these indexes store a plain text relative path of, like, here's the shader that was loaded into this compressed shader file. And then down here you can see the like the actual plain text shader code. And so this is a way to avoid two problems. One, hard coding all of the shaders like in the game memory, which I wanted to prevent that because there's special ways you got to format the strings, and you don't get syntax highlighting because it shows up in your editor as strings. And instead of having like 1,000 different shader files, I just have one. And so on game startup, I parse this entire file and I put it into a table that can be referenced later. It's just a collection of strings, and they're all indexed. So I know exactly where each different shader type is, and it just pulls it out of memory. And honestly, that's pretty much it. That's there's not really any other thing to report other than, things are working. It takes a little bit longer to load right after a fresh compile. Like if you were to compile everything, it rebuilds those tables. Like you saw how that shader file closed on its own. I don't think I'm rebuilding the asset file every time, but it takes a little bit longer to load. And then once you load it a second time, because those tables are already built, it loads much faster. So that's pretty much it. And as far as the game's performance goes, we're still kind of hovering over that 60 frames per second mark. And in the stream last night, we worked on scaling these images here because they weren't scaling with the window. And there's still a little bit of work to be done. There's going to be a sprint later on this year that just focuses purely on getting the all of the to-do fixes out of the way. But that's pretty much it. So moving on to what's going to be the focus for this month. So this month is going to be all about the third-person camera and player controls. So the easiest part of that will probably be the camera control, the user controls, which there's going to be mouse and keyboard support, but I also want to add support for like gamepads. Like this is just a Xbox One controller that I can probably use DirectX input to load up in it. So it'll be in the platform code, and if it detects that there's the presence of a gamepad, it will just add that to its how it updates the update and render function. So I guess I can go ahead and pull that up. So let me just close out of everything here, and I'll pull up the Win32 platform. So inside of our main loop here, so this is our main game loop right now. So we calculate the delta time, process any messages, and then we update and render the game. So somewhere in here, probably among the processing pending messages, there's going to be a check for, do we have the presence of a gamepad or not? And if that status changes, we'll pass that in with the user input. There's not really going to be too much to that. I think it'll be fairly simple. I don't want to underestimate it. It's not going to be trivial, but it'll be a lot easier than calculating the the stuff for the third-person camera. And let me close out all of this. And my plan is the Reclaimer is going to be sort of an over-the-shoulder type game where the player character is focused on what's in front of him. And so the camera is going to be behind him, kind of like this. So it's going to be very reminiscent of like how games like The Last of Us or Dead Space are played. And I want to have a way to switch perspectives. Like if it would be easier for the player to switch between like a over the left shoulder, over the right shoulder type of perspective, and it will allow for quick targeting. Like if the player is being approached by an enemy from a different direction, they can quickly switch to a different perspective to put them to target it, which is something The Last of Us I think both parts did, and something I wish Dead Space had. in Dead Space, there's only like the player holds your weapon in front of you, and you only have like that one perspective that you have to free aim. But in The Last of Us, there's the mechanic where you can quickly switch between the two perspectives, and I'd like to have something akin to that in there. And there'll probably be a few objects in here for the player to look at. There's not going to be like any sort of like animations where if you move forward, the player moves, but there'll be some geometry to help with calculating, or at least helping me to reason about what the camera is looking at. Like, I'd like to make this grid here infinite, so when the character moves, you can actually see the movement. And there will be some, probably, if you remember that purple cube that we started out with that was rendering in the center, there will probably be a couple of those scattered around just to help with if I want to like look at some things. And that's pretty much it. There's not too much else to report on other than the player controls and the third-person camera. But also, if I can roll in the website, I will put in another update on that as well. The only other thing that I can think of would be the entity system, which deserves a video of its own. It's not that it's extremely complex, but I really wanted to... it was something I put a lot of thought into, and I want to make sure that I allocate proper time to explain how I'm doing that. There was a good talk by I think it was a stream clip from Jonathan Blow talking about entity systems, and his thought was the entity system in games it's not where you should be spending all of your time and all of your thought. The interesting problems are going to be ones that make players want to play your game, not how entity systems are set up, because everyone and their mother has different philosophies on like how entity systems are set up, whether they be object oriented or like entity component systems and stuff like that, which I mentioned this before, but I don't really subscribe to any of those because depending on like what data you're working with, the solution can be different, because like different types of data mean different types of problems, which means different types of solution. There's not going to be a magic bullet that's like everything is going to be this type of component or this type of entity, and there's going to be certain systems set up, yada yada. It's whatever gets the job done and gets it done in a way that doesn't negatively impact user experience or performance. So with that, that's pretty much it. And thank you all so much for tuning in. Please subscribe to my channel if you appreciate what's going on, so you can stay updated on whenever I upload a video. And the website, I promise, is coming soon. Very soon. And I'll probably make another video once that's up. And thank you all for tuning in, and I'll see you all next time.